Honorable Patriots, we have a situation here in Canada of grave national importance. We have come to a position now where the Prime Minister of this country has been found in contempt of ethics, rules, and regulations. We have a position now where the Prime Minister of this country has broken ethics, rules, and violations, and consequently must not be allowed to continue as Prime Minister of this country. He cannot be allowed to do that. He has broken rules. He is pretty much an actual criminal at this point. It goes far beyond calling him a Mackdaddy. It goes far beyond calling him the pimp of Canada. It goes far beyond any verbal hyperbolic statements. The Prime Minister of this country has broken rules and therefore must not be allowed to participate in question period, to participate in budget speeches, to participate in any forms of ceremonial or working duties that a Prime Minister of this country faces. If he would be willing to stand aside until his term is up and allow for an acting Prime Minister to take the reins until the next election and participate in the next election as an acting leader of the Liberal Party, whereby he participates in debates, goes on campaigns on behalf of the Liberal Party, and is an acting member of the Liberal Party, or is an acting Prime Minister while the Justin Tacky and Mackdaddy Trudeau is still the leader of his party, because you can be the leader of the party with a majority and not be Prime Minister. That is within the Charter of Rights. There's nowhere in the Charter of Rights or any constitution which says that because his party has more seats and he's the leader, he has to be Prime Minister. No, that doesn't work that way. He can step aside, appoint an acting Prime Minister, but he cannot be allowed to represent Canada as Prime Minister 1 second longer. It would be a great global scandal if we allow Justin Tacky and Mackdaddy, son of Satan, quasi-Zionist, woman-groping, goof-loving Trudeau to participate in the ceremonial and governmental duties as Prime Minister. This would be similar to the situation that was taking place in South Africa when the corrupt Jacob Zuma, or as many call him, Mbabaka Dudumeni Zuma, was in charge of the nation despite having violated the Constitution. We don't do that in a first world Commonwealth country. We shouldn't allow a situation like that to happen, and consequently, Arana Nation is calling for the Prime Minister respectfully to immediately, may not even have to step down, but to stand aside, do not participate in the next election, offer his immediate either resignation immediately or step aside and allow for an acting Prime Minister to keep stability and keep order until we can find a more permanent solution. The Mackdaddy has broken ethics violations. It's just now breaking today. Ethics czars have come out and stated that Justin Tacky and Mackdaddy Trudeau has broken ethics rules by trying to exert influence in the SNC-Lavalin scandal. And this is from Global News. The Prime Minister broke the Federal Conflict of Interest Act by trying to exert influence over former Attorney General Jody Wilson-Raybould in what came to be known as the SNC-Lavalin scandal, according to a new report which has been issued just this afternoon around lunchtime, Eastern Standard Time. This is just now coming out. The Ethics Commissioner, Mario Dion, released the hotly anticipated findings of his report into allegations that Trudeau improperly pressured Wilson-Raybould to override the decision of the Director of Public Prosecutions not to offer the Quebec engineering giant a deal to avoid criminal prosecution on charges of corruption and bribery. Quote, the Prime Minister directly and through his senior officials used various means to exert influence over Ms. Wilson-Raybould, said Dion. This is an independent ethics czar who has now come out and said everything that Wilson-Raybould said was true. And consequently, what that means as well, comrades, is that the Mackdaddy is not only a ethics violator, but a liar and somebody who put Jody Wilson-Raybould, an Indian native strong woman, under the bus to protect himself and to continue with these lies. He cannot be allowed to participate any further as Prime Minister. He deteriorates the country every time he comes out here with his public. There must be something wrong with him. So I'm urging the Speaker of the House of Commons, you're proper, man. You know, you're okay. You're supposed to be independent. I'm telling you, do not allow the Mackdaddy to participate in question period or even sit in the legislature. He is an ethical delinquent. He can't do it anymore. This is unprecedented. Allow one of those other liberals, any one of them at this point, are more competent than this Mackdaddy at this point. Whichever one you want to choose, Chrystia Freeland or Omar Al-Jabra or Bill Blair, the Butcher of Toronto, any one of them at this point, I'm telling you, any one of those liberals, any one of them are more competent to be an acting Prime Minister while the Prime Minister steps aside immediately, because we cannot wait for a liberal leadership to choose another leader of that useless party to become the next Prime Minister. Let him continue being the leader of that sinking ship, that disgusting rat-infested ship called the Liberal Party. Let him continue being the leader of that party. But we need an acting Prime Minister to take us into the next election now, immediately. And once it is concluded that whoever wins, if the Conservatives win, then we don't have to worry. If the NDP win, we don't have to worry. But if the Liberals do win, then we'll have a situation where Trudeau must resign and someone else can take up the Liberal leadership position and become the Prime Minister. But it is clear now, Patriots, you have to understand this. He cannot be Prime Minister 1 second more. And I'm urging the Conservatives and the NDP and the few other people that are in there, Black Quebecois, Green, and that one guy, PPC, Maxime, to deliberately disrupt any speech or any type of participation that Trudeau gives in the House of Commons, just like our brothers and comrades in South Africa did when Zuma was president, the EFF, mostly the EFF, when they disrupted Parliament every time Zuma was set to speak. Do the same thing. If you have to fight, if you have to have police officers throw you out of the House of Commons, do it. Because we cannot allow the Mackdaddy to speak or to become Prime Minister anymore. He has deteriorated this country. He must go. Baba, you must go, Mackdaddy. You must leave. You're an ethical delinquent. Everybody's now saying so. Even members of your own government are saying so. Let's continue with the article. Quote, the authority of the Prime Minister and his office was used to circumvent and undermine and ultimately attempt to discredit and the decision of the Director of Public Prosecutions as well as the authority of Ms. Wilson-Raybould as the Crown's chief law officer. Unquote. Dion specifically looked at Section 9 of the Conflict of Interest Act, which bars public office holders from, quote, using their position to seek influence a decision to improperly further the private interests of a third party, either by acting outside the scope of their legislative authority or contrary to a rule, a convention, or an established process, unquote. As Dion noted in his report, it was not enough just to seek influence someone else for an action to break the rules. There had to be a specific desire to, quote, improperly further the interests of SNC-Lavalin, unquote. And Dion said that is exactly what he found was the case. Quote, the evidence showed that SNC-Lavalin had significant financial interests in deferring prosecution. These interests would likely have been furthered had Mr. Trudeau, I don't call him any Mr. Trudeau, the Mackdaddy, whether furthered, had the Mackdaddy successfully influenced the Attorney General to intervene in Director of Public Prosecution's decision, wrote Dion. Quote, the actions that sought to further these interests were improper since they were contrary to the Shawcross Doctrine and the principles of prosecutorial independence and the rule of law, unquote. Conservative leader Andrew Scheer is set to respond to the report at 1:30 Eastern Standard Time, which is about 20 minutes from now. Charlie Angus, one of the two NDP MPs who initially asked Dion to investigate, called the findings an absolute political bombshell. We have more and more evidence of the collusion that went on in the Prime Minister's office to interfere with an independent prosecution, Angus said. This shows a complete disregard for the rule of law in the country. SNC-Lavalin faces up to a decade of being ineligible for bidding on government contracts if it is found guilty of the corruption and bribery allegations against it over its business activities in Libya from 2001 to 2011. Last year, the Liberals changed the law to introduce legal mechanisms called for a deferred prosecution agreement after heavy lobbying from SNC-Lavalin. A deferred prosecution agreement would let a company admit wrongdoing and face a fine or other administrative or financial penalties rather than a criminal conviction if invited to negotiate such a deal by the Director of Public Prosecutions. And then it just goes on to state and to clarify the history of all of this. So let's just speak about what has happened in a nutshell. For those of you who may not have remembered, let's start afresh so that you can understand. SNC-Lavalin is the largest engineering company in Canada. They have been accused of bribery and other wrongdoings. The SNC-Lavalin Corporation gives billions of dollars to the Liberal Party, so naturally the Mackdaddy, who is the leader of the Liberal Party, will be very sympathetic to them. He did everything he could to stop any prosecutions from happening to SNC-Lavalin or to stop any consequences for them taking place, which is an ethics violation, which we now talk about. He even pressured Wilson-Raybould, his then Attorney General, to not do anything to harm SNC-Lavalin, another ethics violation. She refused to do so. He fired her as Attorney General, and even some were trying to put her in Indian Affairs, which would have been a very big insult to her as an Indian. And Indian Affairs is one of the most wicked organizations which mistreated Indians for a very long time. So it would have been insult to injury. She testified that she was let go because she was pressured to interfere with the investigation into SNC-Lavalin, and that is why this whole thing took place. And now the ethics czar, Mario Dion, is saying that Trudeau actually did do all of the things that Wilson-Raybould said he did. He lied saying he didn't do it. She was fired for no reason. It is a disgrace. It is an insult to the Indian Native community. And the Mackdaddy has broken ethics violation. And that's why Arana Nation is calling for him to step down as Prime Minister and the Speaker or the Liberal Party to appoint an acting Prime Minister until we can get elections sorted out. He can remain leader until the elections are over, but he cannot be Prime Minister anymore. He has forfeited that opportunity. He is a criminal. He has broken laws. He needs to go. He needs to go. And when elections are done and he's out of the leadership position, we'll deal with him then. But for now, he must go. He has to go. He's an ethical delinquent. He's an ethical delinquent. And are Canadians going to put up with this? Or are they just going to look the other way? This is the Arana Nation.